Philipp H. Gutsche is a man with a passion for his family, Coca-Cola, his business, his interests and hobbies, and the community. This is a tribute to a man whose measure is his complete commitment and dedication to each of these aspects. Join us as we take a look at slices from the life of Philipp H. Gutsche. We honor a man who has traveled the roads of the Coke system for more than 40 years, Philipp H. Gutsche. In the words of one of his travel companions on this journey, Coke is in his blood. His journey started as a young boy in school shorts, whose love for Coke ignited a fire deep within.
I brought into the world a little boy who was the first grandson on both sides, and he was a grandson, and that was something very important, especially for the Gutsche side. And then when he was at varsity, or even at school, he always used to go to Port Elizabeth and work there in the Coca-Cola factory. And when he got his driver's license, he got his heavy-duty license. And so he was going around selling Coke and taking orders and all that. And so you see, he's been in the business a very, very long time. He was in Coca-Cola, you could say, almost the whole of his life, from very young years.
Johnny Palasin-Zangani joined SA Bottling when it opened in 1940. Every time he visits the PE plant to collect his pension, it takes him back to those early years when they had one truck, one bakkie, and produced the small Cokes in 6.5-ounce bottles. They did everything themselves, filled the bottles, sealed them, packed the cases, and then carried them to the store, one case at a time. They even worked on Sundays. He thinks about Phil H. Gutsche, known as Junior then. Junior came from school in the afternoons and helped on the production line. Johnny looks around the plant and marvels at how different and yet how much the same Coca-Cola is today.
It was this fire that has sustained his passion, commitment, and total dedication, fueling his dream to grow SA Bottling to become the best Coca-Cola bottler in the world.
In 1960, I visited the PE plant, and who did I notice? Phil in a Coca-Cola delivery truck wearing a beautiful blue suit, obviously going to visit his customers.
I will never forget the time that Phil babysat my children. I'm sure that this was the first occasion that Phil ever babysat, period, never mind for an employee. During his varsity holidays, Phil would act as a driver salesman, and I recall he had to call on outlets in Kirkwood. On one of these days, I accompanied him on the route. Halfway through the day, our truck broke down, and while waiting for a mechanic to arrive, we made a fire alongside the road and bribed Boerewors to pass the time away. Phil, you as a leader had the determination to succeed, and I quite honestly say that it was most exciting to be a member of the SAPCO team. Your certainty made it happen.
I'm sure you would also remember is that when post-mix started, that was after the pre-mix period, all the bioscopes in Port Elizabeth had the so-called Dole dispenser. I had every late afternoon go to pick up some blocks of ice with a helper. We chopped it into pieces and we visit every bioscope to put the ice onto the cold place so as to have cold drinks during the intervals which started from 8 to 12 o'clock. And it did happen that about 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning I was phoned to tell me that the machines didn't work. So I had to get up at that time of the early morning and visit those customers and fix the machines, which I did. We one evening went to the stock car racing in those days at the showgrounds. There was a fairly strong southeaster blowing. After the show was over, we all looked like a kind of coal miners. So all one could see is actually the white eyes and when you smiled, the white teeth. That was about all. Well, Phil, those were a few memories from very early days of SA Bottling. Ingeborg and I wish you all the best for the future, all the health and the wealth and the happiness you can think of.
In Louis Israel's office, he said to me that he felt we should have an agreement that in the event of the death of either of us, the survivor should have the option on the deceased's share in the business. I expressed my concern about that arrangement because I said I had a son who I felt would want to come into the business, and I felt that if I died first, he wouldn't have that opportunity. However, Gordon assured me that in that event he would take my son in as a partner. He then said to Louis, after we'd finished our discussions, Louis, I want this agreement at my house for signature tomorrow, which was a Saturday. Israel obliged, brought the agreement up, and we went through it. There were one or two small modifications which I suggested, and Gordon said, Phil, sign, we can always change it later. Back to Port Elizabeth the next morning, and 16 days later I was phoned to say that Gordon had died.
Good evening, Philip. This is Albert Killigeen. In September of this year, I celebrated my 91st birthday. I'm fairly sure that there are not many other 90-year-olds on guest list. I go back many, many years with the Gutsche family. When I was managing the South African region, we employed Philipp Gutsche as a field representative. It was there that he saw the strengths and weaknesses of the present Dixie distribution system. Philip, you say you're going to retire, but you're not really retiring. Coke is in your blood. You never will retire. You will maybe cut the daily duties down, but you will still have the vision of what South African bottling company can become. And you'll continue to work in it. And in that work, I wish you every success and continued fulfillment.
He spent the early days as a route salesman, a truck delivery driver on a mission. When he took over as manager of the Port Elizabeth branch of SA Bottling in July 1962, it was the first step in a journey that one could equate with a roller coaster ride. Not for the faint-hearted.
I remember as a child in primary school, he didn't like school, he didn't like doing homework, he was not much of a scholar, I suppose, no, but we knew that when he was rather thick around the middle, he'd put on 2 pairs of trousers because he knew he was going to get cuts, he hadn't done his homework.
So homework was not important. And when he came to standard 5, when he had be transferred to 6, his principal said to me, he said, you know, he's not a scholar, and I don't think that he'll go very far. I think when he's past standard 8, you should take him out and let him learn a trade or do something, but I don't think he'll be able to go to any further. Well, when he went into standard 7, we decided that he should go to another school, because the school that we were at wouldn't accept him. He couldn't take Latin. They were going to teach him woodwork and things like that, and my husband wasn't satisfied. So we sent him down to East London to his granny, and he went to Selborne College, and he matriculated there, and he went to university, and he got his BCom. Well, to me that was of course a very great thing. And I always said to the girls, oh, I wish I could tell Mr. Foster, that was the principal, where Philip is and what he's doing. And one day we were invited to a wedding, and he was there, and he came in and he sat right opposite me. And he said, "Hello, Mrs. Gutsche, how are you?" And I said, "Fine," and so on. He said, "And how's Philip?" "Oh," I said, "Philip's very well, you know, he's got his BCom now."
Philip was always going to be successful. I remember we had these friends, these boys he played with them. Their father had an estate agency called Shepherd and Friel. And when we moved into our house in Vanderbilt, we didn't have lawn in the garden. We were all playing in the mud, you know, with our motor cars or whatever we were playing with. And Philip said, he said, "I'm going to be rich." He said, "I know I'm going to have a Rolls Royce." He said, "I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be rich. And I'm going to have something like Shepherd and Friel." He really thought this was the ultimate, that his friends had the Shepherd and Friel, because he thought they were rich.
The most important factor was that he got to know the people he worked with, which laid the foundations for the next 4 decades. Strategic planning sees SA Bottling growing steadily over the next few years, acquiring no less than 9 bottlers and distributors across the length and breadth of South Africa.
I joined SABCO in September 1973. My early observations of Phil have not changed over the years. He has been most consistent in following his own qualities of energy, enthusiasm and determination, and by demanding these from those he employs, a key factor in his success. As you proceed to your new position, Phil, Patsy and I would like to take the opportunity of wishing you and Yvonne everything of the best for the future. We know that you'll give it your best shot, as you've always done, with energy, enthusiasm and determination. Cheers, Phil.
In April 1975, I joined SABCO as secretary to Mr. Gutsche, who at that time was the managing director of SABCO South Africa. We had a much smaller staff by the time movement started taking place. Mr. Gutsche, I'm sure you'll remember all the excitement and the activities that went on at the time. PHG is a perfect example of the adage, you can't keep a good man down.
Morning, Mr. Gutsche, long time no see. All I want to say is wishing you all the best in the future. We've got our memories to keep us going, far back, 1970s and what have you. Good luck for the future. Cheers, Maury.
Well, Phil, I never really thought I'd hear or see the day that you'd actually retire or step aside. But I think it's the most profound happening in our lives at some stage or other, that we have to step aside for the younger generation to fly the flag for us. But Phil, I think you can be exceedingly proud of how you've flown the flag for SABCO and the Coca-Cola system in the past 40-odd years. And I'd like to take you to a period we were very, very busy in 1983-84, particularly 1984. We were busy doing the Port Shepton project, wrapping it up. My late wife, Anneke, was desperately ill at the time, but typical Gutsche fashion, you insisted that I spend as much time as possible with her. Even if it meant that I'd fly back from Durban, back and forth to Durban every day to PE, hire a car and drive to Port Shepton. That, Phil, had a profound effect upon me and my wife, my late wife, and we thank you for that.
Phil Gutsche has always understood the importance of giving recognition where and when it was due, publicizing the company to its staff members, suppliers and consumers. It was this wisdom and inspiration that ushered in the birth of SABCO News in December 1972, with the late Mr. G.C. Bud Bayliss at the helm as editor. Bud Bayliss retired in 1979, but stayed on as editor till 1998. He never missed an edition and produced 101 editions in total. More than 30 years down the road, the publication has evolved considerably and is a vital tool used to meet the communications need for the Coca-Cola SABCO group of companies. And Phil has his own private collection, a copy of every edition. The 1970s were tumultuous times, politically and subsequently economically. The Coca-Cola Company, as all American companies eventually did, withdrew from South Africa. Where men with less vision would have faltered because of the political challenges presented by the policies of the government of the day, Phil H. Gutsche was inspired to grow the South African business.
Well, both of us remember these difficult times when the Coca-Cola Company left South Africa in 1986. Many wrong and bad things could have happened to our business between 1986 and 1992. And I know that without your consistent and unwavering support to Nat Bev and myself, we would not have been able to hold the Coca-Cola system intact, so that in due course it could return to the wonderful and strong business system it is today.
In 1975, he was appointed Managing Director of SA Bottling. For SA Bottling, under his leadership, it was a time of consolidation and acquisition. Lean years, unless you had a vision, which was your focus and inspiration. It was his passion for the business, integrity, honor, vision, and inspired leadership that resulted in the company establishing itself as a leading South African bottler during this period. In 1993, the Coca-Cola Company announced its return to South Africa after a 6-year absence and made South Africa part of their global market. Because of his unwavering compromise for SA Bottling and the Coke brand, and after its return to South Africa in 1993, the Coca-Cola Company offered Phil H. Gutsche his dream, an African adventure. On the 25th of May 1994, SA Bottling Company, led by Phil H. Gutsche, launched its African adventure with a start-up of operations in Maputo, Mozambique. The first step into Mozambique was heralded by an impressive truck parade into Maputo, followed by SA Bottling becoming the 11th anchor bottler in the Coca-Cola global system. And the rest, as they say in the classics, is history.
Phil was named an anchor bottler, and that was one of my proudest moments when we designated Coca-Cola Sabco an anchor bottler of the Coca-Cola system worldwide. What really impressed me about Phil Gutsche was his ability to adapt to each and every culture throughout Africa. I was never hesitant, not one time, whether it was the Ethiopians, the Kenyans, the Tanzanians, the Mozambicans, wherever he went. Phil was affable, adjustable, and willing to work with everyone.
Our first meeting ever in Mozambique as a constituted board was on the 11th of May 1993, and Rudy Fern was present, Ian Bishop, Mr. Gutsche and myself. And barely a year later, on the 25th of May 1994, we had the official opening and inauguration of the first plant in Mozambique. Because the challenges were great back in early 1993, when the decisions were made to move into Mozambique, Mozambique being the first venture that SAPCO had outside of South Africa. If we had electricity for a whole day in those days, it was considered to be a treat. Obviously, we partnered with the right people. Though the state was our official partner in Mozambique, it was represented by people, and we were able to move forward successfully with those people and maintain good relationships with the people that represented the state in Mozambique.
Phil, there's many memorable occasions of our developments into Africa. I think the one that I really recall is when the trucks left the Maputo plant on their journey into Maputo for the truck parade, and the people lined the streets to welcome us, showing an immense amount of joy at the arrival of Coca-Cola. The passion and excitement on your face will always be a memory to me, and I know it's a wonderful memory to you of our first experience into Africa. The trust and confidence that you placed in me and those involved in the Mozambique project on the budget of 21 million is typical of the ethos that you generated in SABCO. Everyone knew your high standards, but respected the knowledge and the experience that you had in the business.
One of the sayings that you always reminded us about was, nobody remembers who came second. You led from the front through your passion and determination to be the best bottler in Africa. the time that you spent at the operations and in the marketplace motivated us all to build a business and achieve our goals. If you identified neglect or bad performance, the music would play and it would be loud and clear what had to be done.
Phil, the challenge you gave the Tanzanian team, Colin Walton and his guys in Tanzania at the Nairobi dinner, illustrates the passion and fun that you generate amongst the people in Sabco. Although the challenge was committed to a serviette in jest, we all knew that that challenge had your word behind it and had a commitment. That challenge was, in actual fact, achieved at the highest level, but that, I think, was due to your sincerity and fun that you created behind it.
The first time I met Phil, I remember it very distinctly. It was my first trip to Africa. It was in the Serena Hotel, and I was supposed to meet Phil to go on a tour of Tanzania. I put on my coat and tie, got on the elevator, went down to meet him that morning, jumped off the elevator. There was Phil, and after introductions, the first thing he said to me was, "Mr. Lukens, we don't wear coat and tie in Africa." Well, it was during that trip that Phil and I first conceived the idea of what became Sabco, which has been a huge success. Since then, Phil and I have really become very, very close friends, at least from my point of view. You can't help but like the guy because of his infectious, positive attitude. Well, Phil, good luck with this retirement thing. I hope you don't drive Yvonne crazy.
No doubt the best decision that I ever made for the Coca-Cola Company was to introduce Sabco to our business in East Africa. Sabco came to East Africa, and they have transformed our business with their professionalism and their commitment, always with the sure and steady hand of Phil Gutsche at the tiller. For our business needs men like you, men of action and men of vision. As they say in this part of the world, Phil, Bahati Mazuri, always good luck.
Today, Coca-Cola Sabco operates in 7 African countries with 21 production centers, employs more than 7,500 employees, and serves 160 million consumers, all because of one man's vision. In the very short space of 6 years, CCS established itself as the undisputed leading bottler in Africa, and in 1998 appointed its first managing director recruited outside of the Coca-Cola system, underlining Coca-Cola Sabco's commitment to be a global player. As the year 2000 dawned, it marked the beginning of the 60th year of the company's history. On the 27th of April 2000, Coca-Cola Sabco celebrated Port Elizabeth's 60th anniversary bottling Coca-Cola. The company's vision, to be the best Coca-Cola bottler in the world, took a step closer when, on the 17th of May 2000, the Coca-Cola Sabco Port Elizabeth plant achieved a world first by being awarded the Coca-Cola Company's highest quality certification. It became the first Coca-Cola plant out of nearly 200 nations to achieve full accreditation for meeting all the stringent requirements for the Coca-Cola quality system. For Coca-Cola Sabco, the journey gains even more momentum, with the opening of new plants in Namamve, Uganda, and in Nampula, Mozambique. The third plant opened in Mozambique since 1994, reflecting the opportunity and growth of the business over the past 7 years. October the 1st, 2001, saw the dawn of another new era in the history of Coca-Cola Sabco. Phil H. Gutsche hands over the office of CEO to Martin Janssen to take up his new role as Executive Chairman. The Coca-Cola Sabco African adventure continued to gain momentum. In October 2001, the group welcomed East Kenya bottlers as a new partner. On March the 1st, 2002, the South African operations of Coca-Cola Sabco merged with those of Fortune Beverages Limited giving birth to Coca-Cola Fortune in South Africa.
Your agreement to merge with a black bottler was a way of saying, I want to make a contribution. And of course, with two cultures coming together, it was not going to be easy. But 2 years has gone by, one can look back and say, you've always been willing to compromise. You've always been willing to move from your stance. You've always been willing to change things so that the ultimate goal is achieved.
At the heart of both these highly successful and truly passionate South African operations is a strong entrepreneurial spirit. The southern region of Coca-Cola Fortune notched up yet another first for CCS when Phil H. Gutsche officially opened the Southern Region Retail Academy on the 4th of October 2002. The Academy is a multifunctional facility which incorporates the first Coca-Cola Products Museum in Southern Africa. The museum area also includes a history corner, documenting the company's humble beginnings back in 1940, a photographic exhibition, and an impressive layout of the Coca-Cola Sabco territory of the time. In May 2003, the Addis Ababa plant of the East African Bottling Share Company inaugurates its new training center, which is named the Philipp H. Gutsche Training Center, in honor of the Coca-Cola Sabco chairman and in recognition of the investment made by Coca-Cola Sabco for the development of people in Ethiopia. 30th of June 2003 marks another world first for the group as Coca-Cola Fortune in South Africa goes SAP live. This SAP implementation is the world's first end-to-end bottling solution within the Coca-Cola system. One other quality that Phil shares deeply with Coca-Cola is his philosophy that you must always have fun.
Phil, this is Zanosi. I know you're expecting me to say good things about you. It's not going to be the case. Your lack of capability is no excuse not to engage into doing things. As you exhibit that in your dancing. You have very poor dancing skills, but that does not stop you from getting onto the floor and join the people and have fun. That's on a lighter note, Phil. I'm just pulling your leg.
Remember on a particular day, while traveling through Nairobi City on a market visit, a thief snatched your Rolex from your arm and ran off. In your usual competitive spirit, you and young Philip Nicholas gave chase and apprehended the robber and recovered the watch. This incident did not put you off wearing your watch on market visits.
I guess many people will talk about Phil Gutsche in terms of his passion for the business and for everything else he gets involved in. And there's no doubt that he has a lot of passion for the business and everything. But I'll probably remember Phil mainly for his speed through airport terminals.
Mr. Gutsche Sr. was a pigeon fancier and a racing pigeon fancier of note with many, many trophies. So the one visit that we had there, Phil and I managed to get into his pigeon loft, and old man Gutsche found us, and my goodness, there was all hell broke loose. Needless to say, we were quickly evacuated, and the one thing that happened to us, we had no Cokes for the afternoon, only glasses of water.
Phil has always exhibited the energetic side of his nature, even though he has been seen nodding off during meetings. He will tell you he was recharging his energy cells. If he is enthusiastic about something, be it work or pleasure, his energy is there for all to see. And I think his yachting and his trade visits are just two examples.
On a lighter note, as chairman of the company, when you attended the GMT meeting in Zanzibar and not required to attend the meeting itself, you had to spend the day with the wives in Stone Town. So when you came back and claimed that you had not enjoyed the day with the ladies shopping, but I know secretly in your heart you had enjoyed the lunch and all the wise tales. I'm sure those will always stay with you.
Each little chalet that we hired gets a car, and a little Toyota Corolla. And if anybody's driven with Phil, you'll realize that he drives on the road like he steers down mine shafts. And so anyway, at the start of the week, everybody was in Phil's car because he's an interesting guy to talk to, and you know, so both ways, the car was always full. Anyway, by the end of the week, I think there's only one person who was willing to drive with him because they had these dirt roads, and he drove about twice as fast as I did.
We ended up on a game farm with Phil, Rick, our families, and Rick and I were there, and we would go on game drives, going back to the speed driving around, and Rick takes a while to tune in with the binoculars onto the wildlife, and we would just get settled. We would just be settled, and we would have a nice bird of prey or something to look at, and Rick would he would be about 2 seconds away from getting everything focused in, and the truck would take off. We were gone again. By the end of the week, we had all the guys hanging off the truck going for game drives. It was really good.
The Zanzibar Olympics on the beachfront illustrates how your mind never ceases on finding a trick to be a winner. We had to fill each barrel with water. There was holes in the barrel, in the drum, and the guys had to fill it from the ocean. And you found that was far too long and tedious. Your quick answer was to put somebody in the barrel, and that typifies the entrepreneurship that you have, and your team as a result won that race. Phil, the concrete is really a legend that you've left in Sabco. We all know that it has to be 150 mils thick and an MPa of 35. And whenever visiting a plant, your head always went down and looked at the concrete. And God help anybody who had any cracks in the corners of their concrete. And Big John in Uganda has always related that story of concrete, and he certainly knows your standards.
A lighter side, I must concede that Phil is a very humorous side, and I've experienced that in a number of situations where even if it's at his expense. I can quote one example where we had a president's dinner, and Phil really, he came from an overseas trip. We didn't expect him to make it, but again it's indicative of the levels of commitment that he displayed. He was tired, and towards the end of the dinner I could see he was really starting to get into a bit of a sleepy mode, and I actually asked him whether he's tired, and he turned that into a joke. He mentioned to me that, look, maybe it's time for him to go, because a good friend of his that's quite older than him actually ended up just falling into a plate of food, you know. And I thought, you know, that's really turning a situation into a bit of humor. And
he actually slammed the door, and that annoyed me because that's abuse of company assets. We got to the hotel, now en route we discussed the normal sort of things we did about the company, and I tried to imply to you that this vehicle is new and you don't need to, and everything was quite well, meaning we don't slam doors. You get to the hotel and Phil Gutsche jumps out, slams the door, I jump out to reprimand him, and he's halfway down the reception area. So there's two things I remember very clearly about you, Phil, right from day one, that you abuse company car doors, and secondly, you walk very briskly. Everything you do in life is brisk. Phil, it just remains for me to wish you and Yvonne, Francois and I all the very best in the future. It's a career change, it's not a retirement, and all the very best for you.
When we visited Interbev and Interbrow, these huge soft drink trade fairs which were held in Munich, Chicago, Atlanta and Houston, Phil would invariably come to me and say, David, you spend the day with me, and to my regret I did that, because with Phil, if the show opened at 10, we'd be there at 9. And he'd already be meeting people, saying hello, introducing himself and finding out who they were. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon I was exhausted, but not Phil. His energy level seemed to rise as the day went on, as we met bottlers from all over the world, suppliers and Coca-Cola executives. This was Phil at his best. We visited stall after stall after stall. It never stopped, and by the end of the evening I was exhausted. But guess who was the last out of the trade show? Phil and I.
Phil with the animals is a little bit like Phil approaches his life. You know, he doesn't wait around. You know, with Phil Gutsche, the shortest way to get to a point is straight. Now, of course, to my children, Phil's an absolute hero because he always gets his animal, no matter what it takes. Phil is relentless. Well, all I can say is thank goodness for Yvonne.
No, he didn't like girls, and he was very unfortunate that he had 3 sisters. My father would say that, you know, he should kiss his sisters hello or goodbye, but that was definitely not on for him. But on one occasion he was going back to school to East London, and he went by train, and we were all lined up at the railway station to say goodbye to him, and suddenly he started kissing us all goodbye. We thought this was so strange. Until we realized, of course, I had a friend with me, Merle, and he was hoping to kiss her goodbye as well.
The vision birthed in Philipp H. Gutsche more than 4 decades ago has materialized, and with a strong management team in place to take Coca-Cola Sabco into a new era, it is with confidence that he relinquishes his role as executive chairman.
It's nice to be back at Coke again, Phil, for our annual visit. They've even got the South African flag here for us.
This was your dream, and we're now seeing the dream come true. Well done, Philip. Thank you.
Phil, I guess one thing I would say is I've always enjoyed you and the board coming to Atlanta. This business has been built on something I think you said around passion and commitment. And it's when Coke runs in the blood, and you bleed Coke, and that's what you do. And thank you for everything you do.
The thing that most impresses me about you is the energy.
You said when you climb on the tiger, you just got to stay on and ride the tiger. And I think today's meeting has almost seen a fulfillment of a journey in terms of becoming good. The results are coming through, and it's been great being on that journey with you. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, one thing that occurred to me as we went through today's board meeting, which Colin alluded to as well, was the fact that it has been a journey. We've known each other for a long time now, and to think back in 95, 96, that we'd be where we are today with actually making money in Ethiopia, but you knew that we would, and long ways to go yet.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to bring to your attention that we're talking about fantastic results today in our board meeting in Atlanta, and I'm very happy about that, but I really want to emphasize that this is a result of teamwork, which started many years ago, and I'm just very delighted to help the company to move from a burning platform to good, and together with all the players we're going to go to great, and I look forward very much to that, and thank you for your leadership around these issues as well. Thank you.
The last couple of years the business have changed, but the one thing that didn't change was the good leadership and the people with passion for the business like yourself.